Hello, I'm Carrie and welcome to my knitting studio. This is episode 13 and it's been about a month since I've recorded a project update, so I have a lot to talk about today. It's the end of April. It's finally starting to look lush and green outside, which is so exciting. I love it when my garden starts to finally look alive. I've been able to make a couple of bouquets for my garden, which is always really exciting, and I've also had a ton of knitting mojo, which we'll talk about today since I cast on a lot of things. So I have 0 finished objects to talk about today, but I have 5 works in progress. That's 2 carryovers from winter and then 3 new spring and summer cast-ons. Last time I recorded, I was talking all about my spring and summer knitting plans, so we're going to see some of those come onto the needles today. But if you're interested in seeing all of the other projects that might come onto my needles next, there are too many projects that I could reasonably get to this year, but I will definitely get to some of them. So if you're interested in seeing what I'm thinking about working on next, be sure to check out my spring and summer knitting plans video. I'll be sure to link it below. So let's go ahead and get into it. I am wearing my Wedgewood vest that I knit last fall. I am really excited to start wearing this again. I, of course, was not wearing it a ton over the winter just because it's a sleeveless garment, but now that it's warming up, it is the perfect thing to wear this spring and summer. I'll briefly stand up so you can kind of see the finished garment because this is like the least exciting part up here, so I'll go ahead and show you. So this pattern features these lovely traveling rib sections. So the lower portion is 2x2 rib with these kind of traveling rib details, and then the center ribbing here. So it's a really cute top, and the ribbing kind of like helps to cinch in the fit around the waist without actually doing any waist shaping. So it's a relatively straightforward knit. I had a really great time knitting it last fall, and as I said, I'm very excited to wear it this spring. I knit this in Fyberspates Vivacious 4-ply and the color maple syrup, and it is quite a lovely gold color and goes with a lot of things in my wardrobe. I honestly feel like gold kind of ends up being a neutral color in my wardrobe. You can wear it with like any color of pants and it goes nicely. So this is probably the 3rd time that I've worn it this spring. When I'm at the office, I just throw a cardigan over it because of course the office is wildly over air conditioned, like every office I've ever been to. So enough about what I'm wearing. Let's go ahead and get into works in progress. So I'm going to briefly touch on the 2 works in progress that I have carrying over from winter, and then spend hopefully most of our time talking about all of my new spring and summer cast-ons. So first up, we have the Harlow sweater by Caidree, and I am working this with 3 different yarns held together. So I am working this all with knitpicks yarns. I'm using 1 strand of stroll that I've had in deep stash for a very long time. That's a variegated color held with a solid strand. The color I think is Midnight Heather, and then a strand of aloft mohair in black. So you get a lovely kind of marled effect here. And since last time I have completed 1 sleeve, I had started the sleeve last time, so I completed the sleeve and barely started the 2nd sleeve over here. I have not worked any on the body at all here, but I've at least completed the 1 sleeve. So last time I had asked for your feedback on what I should do for the ribbing, but at the cuffs, the bottom hem, the collar, and a lot of you had suggested to just stay in the same color. I'm really happy I did that, though I'm kind of now thinking maybe I should pull the bind off out and do just like the very last couple of rows in solid color only. I might try to see what that looks like on the other sleeve once I get to the cuff here, just to see what that contrast little like tip looks like. I'm not super excited about the prospect of pulling out an Italian tubular bind off over here, so if I do decide that I like that better, I'll probably just cut off the last couple of rows here and then, you know, join the new yarn and work it in the solid color. So I guess I won't have to rip back. I would just very, very carefully cut it back. But yeah, we're gonna test it out for just like a few stitches on the other side and see what I think about that slight contrast, and then we'll see. Maybe I'll just end up staying with the cuff as is and, you know, keeping it just the solid color here, which does look really nice. I just think that the contrast could look nice too. So at the back shoulder detail, I had done that all in the solid color, so you have like a slight contrast with just having solid, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, we'll see what I do with the sleeves. Honestly, I have been just kind of picking at this here and there and not really working on it a ton because, well, it's gonna be like 80 degrees today, and I don't really need like a worsted weight with mohair sweater imminently in my wardrobe. So the motivation for working on this one has kind of declined pretty significantly. That being said, I do still kind of want to like keep working on it here and there and ideally get it done before heading into fall versus having a long languishing project over the next 6 months before I'll actually be able to get to wear it. It does go fast because it's a large gauge, but it's also holding 3 strands of yarn, so it's not necessarily like the most easy knitting experience. So yeah, I'll keep picking at it, but it's probably not going to be super fast progress on this one. Oh, I don't think I shared what size I'm making here. So I'm making the size small, which has a target finished chest of 43¼ inches. That'll have about 6 inches of positive ease on me. Technically, by my body measurements, I should be knitting the size medium, but like that's just way too oversized for my preferences. I kind of know the fits that I like. So even this is kind of like pushing it more on the oversized side from what I typically go for. So yeah, I just ended up knitting a size down from what is recommended by the designer because of my own personal preferences. My next winter carryover work in progress is the Cider House socks by Summerly, and I have one of the 2 socks finished. It is so cute. I love the stripe detail, the contrast cuff, the cables. Really, really cute. Love how this is working up. And I also have the second sock started, so I am about to start the heel here. So these are basically the same length for the cuff. I might need to check to see if I need to like work another row or 2 to get to the same length, but almost about to start the heel. So this is definitely moving quickly. When I do decide to work on it, I've kind of been working on it when I want something that's like small versus sweater sized. So this is definitely making faster progress than the Harlow sweater, and I will actually continue to work on this at a reasonable rate, hoping to have my second sock completed by the next time that I record. So I am working these socks up in a couple of different colors from Knotty Pine Fiber Company. The light green color here is Echinacea, which is I think just one of the regular colors that she has, and the cuff here and the toe, I guess, also are colors from the 2022 Advent. So I just wanted to be able to use up some of those minis that I had from the Advent, and they're great little options to use in the cuff and toe as a great contrast. So I'm really excited with how it's turning out here. It looks really pretty, and I'm excited to continue working it in sock 2. I'm a little concerned about the yarn quantity. I think I'll have enough to be able to finish it, but I can always like add in some other, you know, color towards the toe as I get there, and the vast majority will still be in the same color. So we'll see how it goes on yarn usage. I am using leftovers from a fingerless mitt project that I knit, I don't know, a couple years ago at this point. So I did not start off with a full ball of this color. So anyway, we'll see how it goes, and maybe I'll need to stripe something in, but it's looking great for now, and maybe I'll be able to get through it without needing to dive into Stash to find an alternative to finish out the sock. It's been a really enjoyable knit so far. The cables only happen like every, I forget how many rows, but you have like a good amount of just working essentially in kind of a ribbing pattern in between the cable rows. I talked in episode 12 about my small qualm with the cable chart because it's like not using a standard cable symbol. That being said, once you've done literally the first cable row, so one cable row, like you don't need to refer to the chart anymore because you can just look at your fabric to see, okay, which way do the cables need to twist? So it's really an annoyance for a single row for each sock. So once you have that done, super enjoyable knitting experience. You can't really see this on the finished sock here because I have it like on the sock blocker, but at the front and back of the sock, you have like a mirrored cable going on. So I love that mirrored cable detail at the center front and the center back. It's really cute. And I'm excited to wear these eventually. Of course, it's like well past hand knit sock season at this point. Again, as I mentioned, it's going to be 80 degrees today. I don't need hand knit socks when it's 80 degrees, but I will have a fresh pair of socks when it's fall and we're ready to wear hand-knit socks again. So the rest of my projects are all new cast-ons from my spring and summer knitting plans. And as I mentioned previously, if you're interested in seeing all of my spring and summer knitting plans, which is way too many plans, and I will not get to all of these projects, I think I had 12 listed in that video, you can check out that video at the link below. But I have cast on 3 of them, which is a quarter of these projects. So who knows, maybe I'll get to a lot of them. I literally guarantee I'm not going to be able to get to all 12. So we're going to work through these in the order that I cast them on. And this is, as I said, 3 projects, which is actually kind of like 4 projects because I had some problems with one of them. We'll get to that. But we'll start with this first one here. This is what I'm calling the double V tee. And this is a new design, and I don't really have a name for it. It just has a V at the front and a V at the back. So we're tentatively calling it double VT for now. If you have better ideas for a name for this project, do let me know in the comments below. I would be very interested. But double VT for now. So this is, as I said, a new design, and this is the one that features lateral braid detailing. So here's one of the sleeves that I've completed here. And let me roll this forward here. It has lateral braid at the shoulder. So I'll be sure to insert footage of me trying on this partially completed project. I have to, like, you know, put it on some more needles here to be able to fit this over my body. But the overall construction for this piece is a top-down drop shoulder tee. So you start off working the little lateral braid detail, work some short rows for, I guess, for the back first, working V-neck shaping here. Then you start doing the other side, work V-neck shaping to the bottom of the V, work flat until you reach the bottom of the armhole, then turn it around, pick up on the front, and kind of do the same thing where you're working V shaping, though this V is lower than the back V. Do the same thing for the other side, work flat for a little bit before you join to work in the round. You work a little bit of shaping. You can kind of see here, you're working a little bit of shaping to reduce down the stitch count so that like drop shoulder amount extends a little bit further on your shoulder to like provide enough short sleeve coverage, and then going into a slightly more fitted bust in comparison to what it would be if you were just like doing a straight, like the shoulder is the exact same width as the bust. So here the bust is a little bit narrower. That being said, it's essentially like 0-ish ease at the bust for the target. My target measurement here is 38 inches. My full bust currently measures about 37 inches. It's kind of like 37 to 38 inches is usually where my full bust is at. So, you know, closely fitted around the bust, but you have that extra room at the upper body to make sure it feels comfortable. And then you work even for a bit before starting to work some increases. So there are going to be increases through the body, which you can't see here because, as I said, it's getting all cinched up here, but it's going to have a bit of a swingier hem in comparison to the chest. So yeah, you're kind of like reducing down going into the chest, but then like going back out to create a nice kind of A-line, kind of circular, I guess, shape, but a pretty swingy, springy silhouette here. So I'm really excited about how this one is turning out. And I probably honestly could have already had this finished by now, except for the part where I cast on a lot of other projects. So I've been working on a lot of other things too, but I'll definitely continue to work on this one. I'll probably go ahead and just get this other sleeve finished here so I can really see what the upper body fit is. The neckline is just gonna have like an icord trim on it, at least I think. I think that's what I decided I was gonna do. Yeah, it has like, at the sleeve here, there's like an icord after the lateral braid detailing. So I'm just gonna, you know, do an icord for the neckline, nice and simple. The hem is gonna have more of the lateral braid detailing. And I don't think I really mentioned, but for those lateral braids, you can kind of see that there's like laciness in between the rows of lateral braiding. And that's just kind of like what happens when you do a lateral braid. The stitches elongate on the row immediately after you do the braid. So you end up with longer stitches and therefore kind of like a lacy effect without actually needing to knit any lace. So it's kind of nice. And also like, yeah, the lateral braid rows take a while to do, but because of the elongated stitch, it ends up like taking more vertical space compared to a regular row. So it ends up kind of being a wash as to like the length of time required to knit the lateral braid row versus the amount of vertical height that you get. You probably would need to knit, I don't know, like at least 2, maybe 3 rows to get the same like amount of length as the lateral braid situation. I'm not sure if I'm being like clear in my communication here, but all I'm trying to say is that the lateral braids are totally worth it. Yes, they take time, but they look really pretty and they also take up more length. So it's like, it's not that bad, I promise. I did not mention the yarn that I'm using at all here. So I am using Knitting for Olive Merino in the Dusty Artichoke color. It's been really lovely to work with, a little bit splitty because it's like that 3 2-ply construction. So they're like 6 plies that are, you know, 3 sets of 2 plies. And so it's really easy to kind of just like split off 1 or 2 of the plies, but it's also really easy to see when you've done that and just like drop down and go ahead and fix it. But the blocked fabric in my swatch is really lovely. So I'm excited once this is blocked to see what this looks like. It's really light and airy, and I think it's just going to be a really great summer tee. After I finish this one, I'm also going to work a long sleeve version of this because I always like to provide options in my patterns. So we're going to have this short sleeve option and then also a long sleeve using some stash that I've had for a number of years. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of have like a commercial option represented here in the short sleeve, as well as a hand-dyed option. That's the yarn that I have from Stash, is a hand-dyed yarn. So excited to see how both versions turn out, and that will be one of my other spring summer knitting projects, but I'll probably be working on that one a little bit later after I've kind of worked through all of the pattern details, probably started the test knit and all of that, and then kind of like work up a second project while I'm working on the test knit there. So the next project that I have is a complete and total failure. So this was supposed to be a quotidian tee, which is kind of like my basic t-shirt pattern that I've knit a couple of times before. And I was trying to make a long sleeve linen version, or I guess cotton linen version. This yarn is Pearl Soho Oleander, and it's 50% cotton, 50% linen, and it kind of works up like a fingering to light, I guess kind of light fingering. I swatched, I met the gauge for the project in my swatch, but when I cast it on and worked for a little bit, I was like, this is looking a lot bigger than this should look. So I was like, what is going on here? Why is this looking big? I bound off, took it off the needles, washed and dried it because I had washed and dried, like in the dryer, dried my swatch. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just like, it shrinks up a little bit in the dryer, which like totally makes sense. It definitely did that for my swatch. And while it did shrink, it didn't shrink like to the gauge that I had swatched at. So this, I guess, is my swatch now. And so I just measured the gauge that I was achieving here and was like, what project could I work that actually is this gauge that I'm achieving here? I realized that this is the same gauge that I got for my Oak Haven tee, and that is what I ended up casting on to replace this failed project here. So I'm kind of sad that I won't have like the basic tee that I was initially thinking this would be, but Oak Haven tee is really pretty. It has like a beautiful lace deep V on the front and then like a little shallow triangle lace on the back. So it will still be an absolutely lovely garment. It will just be like more elegant and elevated versus like the basic that I was initially thinking that I was going to have. So I will go ahead and show you that project. Here is where I am on my Oak Haven tee. So this is worked bottom up, and I am working this a little bit longer than the pattern calls for. The pattern calls for like, I don't remember the exact length from underarm or length from bottom hem to the underarm, but I'm adding about 3 inches because the pattern has a like cropped length intentionally. My previous versions that I've knit, I plan to wear those over dresses, whereas this one I want to be able to wear it with pants. So I lengthened this to kind of be like a pants intentional garment versus kind of like something that just barely grazes the top of my waist. So this will be much more pants friendly. And you can see that lace that I'm starting here. It's a little hard to see. Let me see if I can kind of like block the light behind it. So you can kind of start to see that lace. It has an increasing lace pattern at the center. So that will just like continue increasing as it goes up the body. This is probably maybe about here is where the garment will end up hitting when it's finished. So working on it here, not obviously still have a good bit of the body to go before I divide for the arms. And then the back right now is, I've just lost a lot of stitches off the back here. It is definitely kind of like a slidey yarn here with a cotton and linen. It's not going to be that bad to get it back on the needles, though. There have been a couple of times where I've just kind of thrown this into a project bag and taken it back out, and like a lot of stitches have fallen off the needles. So I'm always just very careful to end my knitting like around the side area where it's all in stockinette versus towards the center where there's that lace bit, which would be like maddening because you don't have as like neat of stitches around the lace. The lace is like more open, so there's a lot more of ability for it to kind of like start to drop down in the lace section. So pro tip, if you have like a lace panel, always stop outside of the lace panel pretty significantly, or alternately just use like those like knitting needle stoppers. I have some like literally right here. Like I have some that I could be putting on my project and I'm just not. So yeah, the purpose of me turning this around though was to just show you the back. So there's just that kind of like center column of the twisted rib detail there, and that'll go like all the way up towards the upper neckline, and there will be like a small triangle of lace at the upper neckline compared to the deep V at the front, and the necklines are like to the same depth so that you can wear this with either triangle in front, so either the like little triangle or the deep V. The deep V is like the intentional front, but you could totally wear it either way if you want to. So as I said, I'm working this in Pearl Soho Oleander, and you can see this is like a super, super drapey yarn. It's 50% linen, 50% cotton, machine wash and dryerable. As I said, dried my swatch in the machine. I'm excited to be able to pop this into the machine to wash and dry as an easy care summer knit. I'm really liking the drape. It is not very hard on my hands. I know that some people have trouble with linen especially. I feel like this being cotton and linen, there's not a lot of give in this yarn. So if you do typically have problems with yarns that don't have a lot of give, this probably will give you problems. But for me personally, there's like just barely enough give in it that it's still a comfortable knitting experience for me. I'm also not a super tight knitter, so that may contribute to me having a generally positive knitting experience. It's definitely a different experience than knitting with wool, and that's also probably like why I'm having those gauge issues. I did my swatch on double pointed needles, and I should have totally done it on like my project needles, because like the way that I hold double points is different than the way that I hold a circular needle, just because you have like a longer runway of needle to hold on to, so your grip ends up being different. But I would bet that the reason why I had that gauge problem of like my swatch not meeting my finished project is because it's, you know, a plant fiber yarn. It's cotton and linen. It's not stretchy. So there's like, I don't know, like when you're kind of like pulling the yarn around the needle and like shifting it to the next stitch, I feel like with a wool yarn, you're kind of like using some of the elasticity of the yarn as you're working it, and it ends up nice and snug around the needle, but you don't really have that same elasticity to like snug up around the needle. It just kind of is like laid over the needle and ends up being like, I guess, a looser gauge than the same yarn or the same weight of yarn and the same needles that you would use with wool. So I think I eventually will try to do a quotidian tee in this yarn because it's a really lovely yarn. I'll just have to get some US2 needles to try out to see if I can get gauge using those versus the US3s that I used for my wool versions of this project. So just getting a little bit of a different gauge with US3s versus what I typically get with wool, which I guess should not be a surprise to anyone. And I guess I should share the size and construction details of this pattern. So I am working the size 40. This is a bottom up drop shoulder tee and the body is worked straight. So it'll be a 40-inch circumference throughout that lower body area, and then just kind of a standard drop shoulder. So on that other tee, the like double V tee that I'm working, I have like shaping at the underarm to extend the shoulder wider. This one does not have that. It just will have this sleeve that you work after to provide that additional short sleeve coverage. A little bit of a different construction there. And yeah, it'll have like a round neck at the front and back. So you just kind of like work to the underarm, then you divide for the front and back, continue working the front, because you're like working the lace pattern. So it makes sense to like continue working the lace pattern rather than like abandon the lace pattern and try to remember what row you're on the lace pattern. Work the front, you start the neck shaping kind of in the middle. Of course you start the neck shaping in the middle, like the neck isn't off like to one side of the sweater, but start working the neck shaping, work some short rows for the shoulder, and then kind of do the same thing on the back. I knit this pattern last several years ago. I think you 3 needle bind off the shoulders together. Maybe you seam the shoulders together. I'm probably going to 3 needle bind off the shoulders together regardless of what the pattern tells me to do, and then pick up for the sleeves around the armholes, knit the sleeves. I'm going to be knitting long sleeves for this one. Excited to see how this continues to turn out, and I think it will be really cute, even though I kind of had to pivot what project I was planning to work with this yarn. Okay, it's time to talk about my last cast on. So this is my third, I guess kind of fourth cast on, but third project because had to abandon the one. This is a little plinth tee for my daughter. I am using Pearl Soho Santalina in the red feather color. I am working up the size 4 years, which is like the next size up. She's currently 2, so like the sizes kind of like fit up to the age. So this will be a little bit big on her now, but she'll be able to wear it like this year and next year and maybe like a little bit into the following, depending on, you know, how she grows and all of that, because every kid is different. They all grow differently. You never really know, but it's bigger than what she currently needs and she'll be able to wear it at some point. I'm also working the full hem modification, so there's a little bit more swing on here compared to what there would be for the standard, which is like more of a like peplum like hem. This is kind of more of a fluttery hem with just a little bit of extra ruffle. So it doesn't take like a ton of extra yardage to do like the full hem. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. I think I'll have plenty of yarn to be able to do this since it's just going to be a short sleeve tee, and then still have plenty of leftovers to pair with the other color of Santalina that I had gotten to then do a stripy tee for another project for her. So I am probably about, I guess, more than halfway through the body, because you start with like the hem, you work the hem sideways using short row wedges to create that extra fullness, and then you pick up around to then work bottom up. And there's that little textured detail at the center front and also at the center back, just for some extra, you know, textural interest there. And I'm again dropping stitches off of my needles. I'm working this on like a 16-inch circ because it's a tiny baby body circumference, and my other needles are like too big for the circumference. So working it on small needles here does kind of get crunched up, but I'm probably, I don't know, two-thirds of the way, more than 2/3 of the way. I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way done with the body. I forget exactly the measurement that'll work to from the bottom hem, but I have about an equivalent amount of the garter hem versus the body. So I'm getting close to the point where I will divide for the front and back and then just work the upper bodies. And the sleeve trim is worked at the same time as you work the front and the back. So once you kind of like get up to the shoulder and join everything, the only thing that you have left to do is work the neck trim, and that's just a little I-cord. So it's a fun construction that's like, I don't know, satisfying, easy, doesn't have a ton of finishing associated with it. So I'll just have like a few ends to weave in and the I-cord trim at the neck, and then it'll be a cute top. So as I said, I'm working this in Pearl Soho Santalina. This is like cotton viscose linen blend. I can't remember the exact fiber content, but it is a machine wash and dryable yarn. I knit a project last year in this yarn, and I've been machine wash and drying that garment for a number of times at this point, and I've been really pleased with how it's washing and wearing. It does kind of like crinkle up a bit, of course, in the dryer, especially if you're like not removing it from the dryer promptly, which, like, let's be honest, I'm rarely removing laundry from the dryer in any kind of prompt manner. So things end up a little bit wrinkly, but you can just kind of like stretch it out, like steam it a little bit if you want to. Honestly, like just the heat of your body wearing it kind of like helps to release the wrinkles that get into it. So she's a 2-year-old. I don't think she's gonna care if her clothes are wrinkled. A lot of her clothes have like, you know, paint stains on them or marker stains or whatever, and I'm fully anticipating the same to happen to this. But the point of knitting clothes for your children is for your children to love and wear the clothes that you make them, and that means that they're probably going to get messy, and that's okay. So we're just going to make this an easier care option that can just like go in the washer dryer, and yeah, it's probably going to get messy. It's, you know, not going to stay in pristine shape, but I want her to wear her clothes. Clothes are for wearing. I don't need to keep this in a special box or anything and just like have it sit there and not get worn. I think that's the thing with kids knits. You just kind of have to accept that either A, they're not going to get worn if you want to keep them clean and like looking nice and tidy and like heirloomy or whatever, or B, you can have your kid wear and love the things and they're going to get messy. And just kind of like make that acceptance and like know that your work is maybe getting messy, but it's also getting loved. For me, that's the more important thing. So I love to see my daughter wearing the clothes that I make for her, and I'm excited to have this piece get into her wardrobe rotation this summer. That is assuming that she decides that she likes to wear it. She has specific things that she always goes to first, so maybe this will become one of them. We'll find out. She's a 2-year-old. She has a lot of opinions. So hopefully she wears it and loves it and it becomes something that she kind of reaches for regularly. I don't really have control over that, but that is the hope. I'm excited to keep working on this. So it should be completed by the next time, given that it is such a small project. It's probably, I think it'll take like just over 1 skein of Santolina. So honestly, really fast knit. I got this done in, I don't know, like a few days of knitting. So it's really fast, it's really fun. I highly recommend Kids Knits for a quick win if you're willing to accept the messy factor that kind of will inevitably come along with your child wearing a lovely hand knit. That is all I have to share today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're looking for me on other platforms, you can always find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Carrie Knits. I also have a newsletter list where I share about all of my designs, including a preview knitting list as well. Both of those are linked below. So the regular newsletter list is kind of like news and discounts for new designs. And then the preview knitting list is if you're interested in testing out new designs before they get released, you can sign up there to be notified when the applications go live. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.